Before the whispers, before the river turned red, the village of Mbuta lived in the gentle rhythm of life, a harmony so fragile it felt as if even the spirits watched carefully not to disturb it. The hills surrounding the village were green and endless, rolling softly into the horizon where the great river Nkara flowed like a silver serpent under the sun. Each morning, women sang as they carried water in clay pots balanced gracefully on their heads, their laughter echoing through the misty dawn while the songs of weaver birds answered them from the trees. The men returned from the fields at dusk, their bodies glistening with sweat and pride, as the scent of roasted maize and palm wine filled the air. Children chased one another between the clay huts, their giggles lifting toward the orange sky, free and unbothered by time. In Mbuta, every sound, every heartbeat, belonged to something larger, a rhythm older than memory itself. The villagers believed that every harvest, every birth, every death was bound to the spirits of the river and the forest. Offerings were made beneath the full moon, goat blood spilled on sacred stones, palm wine poured into the earth, to remind the unseen forces that they were remembered. The elders said that as long as respect was given, peace would remain. And for generations, it did. But peace has a way of drawing envy, even from the shadows. One night, when the moon glowed faintly behind drifting clouds, the wind carried a sound that did not belong, a whisper, soft and wet, like breath on water. It was then that the first omen appeared. A mark, black as ash and shaped like a spiral, was found upon the old tree near the river. The air grew heavy that night. Dogs barked until they collapsed, and fireflies vanished from the fields. The elders gathered around the mark, muttering prayers they had not spoken in decades. None knew that the balance they cherished had already begun to crack. And when dawn came, the river moved differently, slower, deeper, as though it remembered something it had once tried to forget. When morning came, a cry rose from the center of the village, a cry unlike any other. The wife of Numu, the proud hunter of Mbuta, had gone into labor beneath the whispering roof of her clay hut. The women gathered around her, their hands anointed with oil and ash, singing softly to the spirits of birth, while the scent of burning herbs filled the air. Outside, men waited in tense silence, clutching their charms, their eyes fixed on the rising sun. Hours passed, sweat and pain intertwined with prayer, until the sound broke through, a wail, strong and defiant. Then another. Twin cries echoed through Mbuta like the call of ancient spirits awakening from slumber. The village erupted in both joy and fear, for twins were not merely children, they were omens. Some said they brought blessings from the ancestors, others whispered they carried unfinished souls. But when Vumo stepped inside and saw their tiny faces glistening beneath the flicker of a clay lamp, his heart trembled with awe. His wife, Alima, lay weak yet smiling, her eyes shining with exhaustion and pride. The twins, one boy and one girl, were unlike any the midwives had seen. The boy's eyes gleamed like burning coals, while the girls were pale and calm as river stones. The eldest midwife muttered under her breath, tracing a sign of protection on their foreheads. "They are touched," she whispered. The words hung heavy in the smoky air. That night, as drums echoed far into the forest celebrating their birth, the wind outside carried a low hum, a sound that seemed to come from beneath the river. And deep within its waters, something shifted. Days passed, but peace never returned to Mbuta. Strange things began to unfold in silence. Chickens laid black-shelled eggs. The goats refused to feed near the river. Women heard whispers when they fetched water, voices calling their names in tones both familiar and distant. Vumu, though strong and fearless in the hunt, could not shake the feeling that his family was being watched. One evening, he found footprints beside the twins' sleeping mat, tiny, wet, and leading to the door. No one had entered. No rain had fallen. His wife, Alima, grew pale, her laughter fading into hollow stares. She said she dreamt of a woman cloaked in reeds, standing by the river, calling for her children. When Alima told the elders, they warned her never to return to the river after dusk. "The river remembers debts," the chief muttered. But Alima's curiosity gnawed at her. On the seventh night, when the moon was full, she slipped out in silence, her bare feet brushing against cool grass, the twins asleep behind her. The river shimmered under the pale light. And there, near the marked tree, she saw it again, the spiral glowing faintly beneath the water's skin, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then came a voice, soft and sorrowful, "You took what is mine." Alima stumbled backward, her breath caught in her throat, her mind refusing to believe. The water rippled though no wind stirred. When she ran home, the earth beneath her feet felt colder, heavier, as though it carried her shame. From that night on, nothing in Mbuta was ever the same. The twins grew swiftly, their eyes reflecting storms that no child should know. When they laughed, the fire flickered blue. When they cried, the air turned cold. The villagers began to whisper again, louder this time, calling them the river's debt. Mfumu tried to silence them, his pride and rage blinding him to the fear spreading through his home. He sought the priestess of the sacred hill, a woman said to speak with both the living and the dead. Her hut smelled of smoke and bones. She listened to his story in silence, her wrinkled face unmoving, and when he finished, she spoke only 7 words, "A mother's promise binds what blood cannot." Mfumu returned home shaken, unsure what her meaning held. But Alima understood. She had never told him what she had whispered by the river that night. When she gave birth, she had called on an ancient spirit of fertility, a being older than memory, promising her children in exchange for protection. But she had not fulfilled her offering. The spirit had come to collect. That evening, as thunder rolled over Mbuta, the twins sat before the fire, their shadows stretching longer than their bodies. The boy whispered, "Mama, she is calling again." Alima froze, her heart turning to stone. And outside, lightning struck the old tree, splitting it in two. The mark on its trunk burned red, and the river roared as though laughing in triumph. Rain lashed against the thatched roofs. The wind howled through the forest like a wounded beast. Villagers huddled inside their huts, clutching charms, reciting ancient prayers. But no prayer could silence what had been summoned. From the river, mist rose in shapes that looked almost human, faces twisting in the fog, eyes glowing with pale fire. Mfuma gripped his spear, standing before his hut, drenched but defiant. "You will not take my blood," he shouted into the storm. The thunder answered with laughter. Behind him, Alima screamed. When he turned, the twins were gone. Only their small mats remained, wet with river water. Mfuma ran into the storm, calling their names until his voice broke. Near the riverbank, he saw them standing hand in hand, staring at the glowing spiral now burning bright beneath the surface. "Come back," he cried. But the girl turned, her eyes filled with calm sorrow. "We belong to her," she whispered, her voice echoing like wind over water. The river rose suddenly, swallowing them in a rush of white foam. Mfuma leapt forward, but the current threw him back. The last thing he saw was their faces, serene and distant, as if at peace. Then they were gone. The night after the celebration was unnaturally still. Even the crickets dared not sing. A faint mist crept into the village of Mbuta, curling through the narrow paths and wrapping itself around the huts like a warning. Kato stirred awake to silence, so heavy it pressed against his chest. Zuri's side of the mat was empty, her warmth gone. The flickering flame in the clay lamp trembled, and then he saw it, the spiral on the door, drawn in ash and blood, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. His hands shook as he reached for it. It was still wet, still breathing. Behind him, the twins began to cry, softly at first, then louder, as if they could sense that something sacred had been broken. Kato turned toward them, tears clouding his vision, realizing that the woman he loved had vanished without a trace. Outside, the wind carried whispers through the trees, and the river groaned like a grieving mother. Days turned into weeks, and fear became part of Mbuta's air. Fishermen refused to go near the river after dusk, for they claimed to see a woman in white walking upon the water. Some said her face was Zuri's, her eyes glowing like dying embers. Others said it was her spirit, bound to the river for breaking a forgotten pact. One night, a group of brave young men followed the sound of singing, a haunting lullaby that floated across the mist. They stopped at the riverbank and froze. There she was, knee-deep in glowing water, her long braids drifting like tendrils of smoke, her voice echoing with sadness so deep it pierced their souls. When she turned her face toward them, her lips moved without sound, and her reflection rippled in the opposite direction. The men dropped their torches and ran, their screams swallowed by the night. From that moment on, no one spoke her name aloud. They called her only the Woman of the River. The years passed, but the river's curse did not fade. Cato raised the twins alone, his heart half ash, half faith. Nala, the girl, glowed with warmth, her laughter brought birds back to the trees, her touch healed bruises before they formed. But Nuru, the boy, was different. His skin grew pale like the moon, his eyes darker than night. He feared sunlight, clinging to the shadows even when his sister danced in the golden fields. When he cried, rain clouds gathered. When he smiled, the air grew cold. Villagers whispered that the twins carried their mother's spirit split in two halves, light and shadow. Cato tried to love them equally, but the ache of what he'd lost lingered in every breath. He prayed to the ancestors for guidance, but the river gave no answer, only ripples that shaped themselves like eyes watching from below. The once lively village began to fade into quiet dread, as if the earth itself held its breath, waiting for something yet to come. One dawn, unable to bear the silence anymore, Cato journeyed to the edge of the forest, to the shrine of the river priestess. Mist coiled around the roots of ancient trees, and carved totems watched him with hollow eyes. When he found her, she stood barefoot before the altar, her skin painted with white symbols that pulsed with faint blue light. "You seek what you should never touch," she murmured without turning. Her voice sounded like water over stone, old, patient, knowing. Cato fell to his knees and begged, his tears darkening the soil. "Tell me how to free my children from this curse," he pleaded. The priestess turned slowly, her gaze heavy with sorrow. "The river remembers," she said. "Your wife gave herself to the spirit of Mbuta. But she did not die, she became its voice. Now your children carry her promise." Cato's breath faltered. "What promise?" he asked. The priestess raised her hand toward the east, where the moon still lingered red in the dawn light. "When the crimson moon rises again," she whispered, "the river will call what belongs to it." That night, the sky bled. A red moon hung low over Mbuta, painting the river in crimson light. The villagers gathered in silence, their faces pale with fear. Cato stood at the water's edge, holding his twins close to his chest, their hearts beating in sync with his own. Mama Adissa followed behind him, chanting softly, her voice trembling with ancient words meant to calm the restless spirits. The river shimmered like liquid fire, and mist rolled over its surface, carrying the scent of iron and rain. "It's time," the priestess had said. And Cato, his heart breaking yet resolute, stepped forward into the glowing tide. Behind him, the villagers knelt, whispering prayers to every god they knew, for they could feel the air shift, the spirits were awake once more. As Cato stepped deeper into the crimson-lit waters, the river stirred like a living creature. The current coiled around his legs, cold and alive, whispering in a language older than memory. He held Nala and Nuru tight against his chest, but the water rose higher, shimmering with silver light. Then, from the heart of the river, she appeared. Zuri. Her form emerged from the glow, beautiful, sorrowful, and divine. Her red and gold attire shimmered like it was woven from light itself, her eyes pools of liquid silver. The air fell silent, even the night insects froze in awe. Cato trembled, torn between love and terror. "Zuri," he breathed, his voice breaking. She smiled faintly, a smile not of joy, but of forgiveness and grief intertwined. The villagers on the bank fell to their knees, their torches flickering in the sacred radiance. Zuri lifted her hands, and the river responded, glowing brighter until its reflection swallowed the stars. Her gaze drifted to the twins, and tears of light rolled down her translucent face. "They are the bridge," she whispered, her voice echoing through water and wind alike. "One born of sun, one of shadow." They will decide what remains life or curse. The world trembled as lightning split the crimson sky. The river roared, churning into waves shaped like faces, spirits of those who once guarded Mbuta, awakened from their watery slumber. Zuri's spirit rose higher, her arms wide, her hair billowing like smoke and silk. The twins cried in unison, and the water responded, swirling around Kato in a blinding spiral. Mama Adissa shouted prayers, her voice nearly drowned by thunder. "Zuri!" Kato screamed, "Take me, not them." But the river had no mercy. The glow around Nuru deepened into shadow, while Nala's turned golden like the dawn. The water surged upward, forming a column that wrapped around Zuri's spirit. Her face was agony and peace at once, as though love and penance fused into one final act. "Balance must return," she whispered, and with that, the river exploded in light. Villagers covered their eyes as wind and water howled through the night, carrying voices of ancestors long dead. When silence finally fell, the red moon faded into pale mourning, and all that remained was the gentle sound of the river breathing once more. Dawn broke soft and sorrowful over Mbuta. The river lay calm, reflecting a sky streaked with gold and rose. Kato knelt upon the shore, soaked and trembling, holding little Nala in his arms. She glowed faintly, her small chest rising and falling in peace. Beside him lay Nuru, wrapped in white cloth, his face serene as if asleep. Mama Adissa approached slowly, her wrinkled hand resting on Kato's shoulder. "The river has taken what it must," she said softly. "But it has given peace in return." Kato looked at the gentle ripples before him and for the first time felt no fear, only understanding. The water no longer glowed, but it hummed quietly, as though carrying a heartbeat he would always know. Mist rose from its surface, soft and forgiving, touching his face like Zuri's farewell. The villagers gathered behind him, heads bowed, whispering prayers of balance and remembrance. The curse had ended, but the memory would live forever in the rhythm of the river. Years passed, and the village of Mbuta healed under the watchful eyes of the river. Nala grew into a woman of grace and strength, her beauty gentle, her presence radiant. The people called her Mwana wa Maji, the daughter of the water. In her hut filled with herbs and charms, she tended to the sick with hands that glowed faintly gold. Wherever she walked, crops grew richer, and the cries of infants softened. She never spoke of her mother, but every evening she lit a small lamp by the carved spiral symbol on her wall, a mark that once cursed her family, now transformed into a sign of harmony. Villagers came from far and wide to seek her blessing, saying she carried both the calm of the river and the warmth of the sun. And though peace had returned, there were nights when Nala would pause, feeling the pull of the current outside, hearing faint whispers in the wind, her mother's song carried in the ripples, still watching, still guiding. On one such night, under a full silver moon, Nala walked alone to the Mbuta River. The air was still, and fireflies drifted like tiny spirits around her. She knelt by the bank, gazing into the shimmering surface where faint ripples began to form faces, Kato's calm eyes, Zuri's soft smile, and Nuru's quiet shadow. Her reflection merged with theirs, glowing faintly gold and blue. "Are you at peace?" she whispered, her voice trembling with love and longing. The river responded with a gentle ripple, as if nodding. Nala smiled, tears glistening on her cheeks. "Then so am I," she said softly. The moonlight wrapped around her like a blessing, and for a moment, it seemed as though the entire village exhaled, the spirits, the living, and the river itself united in stillness. As the night deepened, her whisper lingered in the air, haunting and eternal. "The next time you see your reflection shimmer in the river, will you know who looks back?"